talking about stress awareness, like I grew up in a different time. Social media wasn't any kind of a player compared to what it is now. What kind of stressors are you seeing kids dealing with these days?
Absolutely. Social media is actually a significant stressor that we're seeing in a lot of kids, especially preteen leading into adolescent age. A lot of the older generations, we sort of entered into social media a bit later, but we see that kids nowadays are actually starting to dip their toes into TikTok and even Facebook a little bit earlier on than perhaps our generations are. And we see that it certainly can be a cause of stress, especially if there's not good education on filters that are used to alter skin, alter body proportions, alter body image. And sometimes that can actually set unrealistic expectations for kids and adolescents on what I'm supposed to look like, what I'm supposed to wear, what products I'm supposed to use, or even potentially what makeup I should be wearing. And a lot of times, if there's not good education on, hey, there are filters that can actually remove even pores from your face, even remove the skin's natural contour. And there are filters that can alter body as well, and all sorts of things. If there's not good education, sometimes that can set some unrealistic expectations for a lot of adolescents that we're seeing.
Yeah, for adults too. Are there any other major stressors that you're seeing?
Well, we certainly think about stressors in the different environments that kids and adolescents are in. So we think about stressors within the home, if there's any internal conflict within the family, marital conflict, or conflict among siblings. We also think about conflict in the schools, or if they're working, potential bullying in the school or conflict within the workplace can be a stressor as well. But it's always important to think about the cyber environment as well, because depending on the type of adolescent we're seeing, that can be a significant proportion of where they're drawing their peer influence from. A lot of times, especially with the stages of development, when we're thinking about adolescent age, the main goal for their age group is to relate among their peers. And so if our sources of information for relatedness are mainly virtual, then we might be seeing a distorted image. And so if those types of filters, if those types of images aren't broken down and brought to a realistic level, sometimes that can make adolescents and teens more prone to having a negative self-image and potentially interfering with identity formation as well, which is the next great goal of the next phase of life from adolescence leading into young adulthood.
I think it's hard for kids to speak up and one, recognize that they're stressed, and two, tell their parents, I'm overwhelmed or this is stressing me out. What can parents look out for? What are the signs they should keep an eye out for?
So in younger children, we actually see more irritability and anger, potentially even more tantrums rather than being more withdrawn. We do see a more withdrawn personality in our older teens and young adults, but in kids, it's actually more of the anger that's a big symptom to watch out for. If you notice that they're having a lot of outbursts, if they're having a hard time regulating their emotions. Kids don't always have the words to describe what they're feeling or what they're going through, but they do have emotions and they sure use them. So paying attention to changes in emotions, paying attention to change in normal habits can be an important sign to look for. And then of course, in our older teens, we want to be on the lookout for changes in sleep, changes in appetite, being more withdrawn from family and friends and peers, being less interested in hobbies, not caring about things that they normally were having a lot of fun doing or things they were very interested in. Also, any reported thoughts about harming themselves. Of course, any self-harm behavior should definitely be brought to the attention of a physician right away. But it's important to distinguish between signs and symptoms. Symptoms are something that the adolescent themselves experiences, but they might not always say it to their parent or their healthcare provider. So internally, they might be feeling the sadness, they might be feeling the symptom of anhedonia, which we call lack of interest in hobbies. But on the outside, it might show up as, oh, they're spending all day in their room. They're spending all day on social media. They're not hanging out with their friends like they used to. So those are the signs that parents can really be watching for.
That's such an important distinction. So say as a parent, you start to notice some of these things. What are meaningful actions you can take to help your kid?
The first step would be to establish a environment of safety within the home. It's important to have an underlying understanding that the home is a safe space and that kids can be free to express their emotions or their troubles or even their difficulties and even their frustration with their parents. So having an overall overarching theme of safety and love in the home is sort of the first step. And then the second step would be to ask open-ended questions. They might not always have the words to say, but even if you point out, hey, I've noticed you're not hanging out with your friends as often. What's going on? And sort of allowing for a non-judgmental approach to a response. And if they feel inclined to let you know what they're going through, or even if they might be using alcohol or another substance, having that non-judgmental approach is really key to building trust. And once that trust is built, that gives us a really good framework to build on and to get help from. Of course, if a parent notices any of those signs, certainly I recommend bringing them into a pediatrician or a family practitioner, a healthcare provider that can continue the evaluation and provide further support.
Gotcha. Kids aren't the only ones who are stressed in the house. Parents have all the stressors too, other siblings. How as a family would you advise folks to manage that, to ease that burden?
Definitely. So for the individual level, and I always think that mental health starts at an individual level, because if we are healthy and we are whole, families are made up of individuals. So healthy individuals can build up and compose healthy families. So making sure that you're getting adequate sleep, certainly making sure that you're following a regular diet, getting regular exercise is also very important. Making sure that you're periodically seeing a physician or a healthcare provider or primary care physician, making sure that you're getting baseline labs. So the medical side is all checked out. But let's say you're going through a typical week and you're feeling stress from work or stress from the different environments that are demanding different things from you. It's important to take moments of mindfulness, and that's a particular approach that's often used in cognitive behavioral therapy to help with anxiety symptoms. So for instance, if you're feeling overwhelmed or stressed at work, let's say you've got a lot of customers or a lot of people that are making demands of you, you can take a moment, and I often use breathing techniques for mindfulness. So an easy one, which is called 4-7-8 breathing, is go into a place where you could comfortably be on your own, and taking an inhale over 4 seconds, holding it for 7 seconds, and then exhaling over 8 seconds. Doing that 3 or 4 times actually can lower your heart rate and bring everything to sort of a calm focus. So that's one easy technique that I often recommend my patients try out when they're feeling overwhelmed or anxious. There are, of course, apps on your phone or smartwatch that prompt you to breathe and take moments of mindfulness. But putting those to use when we need them, especially when we're anxious, when we're overwhelmed, when the stresses of life have our brains going in lots of different directions, it's very helpful to focus in on the present moment, our breathing, the simple things, our heartbeat, and focusing in on that. Breathing can be a very helpful tool for that.
Your tips are so simple and something that I feel like we should all follow, but sometimes we do such a bad job of taking care of the individual because we're so concerned about the whole, not thinking about how important that individual is in the whole.
It's very key. And when we take that time for mindfulness, maybe we notice, hey, I'm actually a little more patient with my husband or my kids when I am peaceful, when I am calm, when I am centered, and when I am grounded. And I also wanted to mention a grounding technique that I often recommend for my patients. So grounding, the principle is when we're feeling overwhelmed or anxious, brain's going in a lot of different directions, or emotions going in a lot of different directions. It can be helpful to ground our feelings and our thoughts in our senses, our 5 senses. So sight, sound, touch, smell, taste. An easy grounding technique that I like is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So you start with 5. Wherever you are, notice 5 things that you can see. So using your sight, notice the colors, shapes, textures around you. Then you notice 4 things that you can touch. Notice the feel of your clothing, the feel of your skin, maybe even the coldness of the table. Then it's 3 things that you can hear. So noticing the sounds around you. And that forces you to think, okay, about your outside environment, your inside environment, maybe even hearing your breathing. And then 2 things that you can smell, 1 thing that you can taste. So it's helpful to have sugar-free gum or something else on hand. And that can actually be helpful for my patients with panic attacks, where a feeling of overwhelm and anxiety can roll off and exacerbate into a bigger feeling of panic. So sometimes stopping that overwhelming cascade in its tracks with grounding can be another helpful tool as well.
I have a kid who struggles with anxiety, and I am going to use both the breathing technique and the grounding technique to see if that'll help him a little bit. So I appreciate that. Was there anything else you wanted to add?
I would just say that with the pandemic, we've definitely seen an uptick in depression and anxiety. I was looking at some old studies, very old studies, back in 2020, forever ago, before the pandemic.
A different time.
Right, a different era, right? And they had seen about 5 to 8% of kids having depression. But over the pandemic, and also in that same time period, about 1 in 5 adults with depression or anxiety, mostly depression. And so now, after the pandemic, we're actually seeing higher numbers. So I think it's important to acknowledge that perhaps we're seeing it more often than we did before. And we're seeing it in encroaching into lots of different areas of life. We perhaps are seeing it more in our workplaces. Perhaps we're seeing it more in our coworkers and in our bosses even. And perhaps we're seeing it more at schools with our teachers and our fellow parents and students and wherever you go, whether it's church or business. I think it's important to acknowledge as a community as a whole to give each other grace and to give ourselves grace, because we all are individuals that need to be healthy to make up a healthy community. So making sure to prioritize your own health, taking time to find your own peace and find your own center, and together we can make a healthy community.